Hey y'all, my name is Seth Bennett. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome. Humbled to be here. This group has had a tremendous impact on my life and sobriety over the last 10 years as a solid service-oriented AA group. I came to this group in 2014, August of 2014. August 5th is my sobriety date. And it wasn't because I was being virtuous or I was a good guy. I just came here and was in the right place at the right time, and you guys started showing me different service commitments and things to sign up for and to put my name on a list to make coffee or open the meeting or chair the meeting or go to detox. And probably over the last decade, those tenets and those fundamentals have been absolutely imperative on a comfortable and happy and meaningful and purposeful sobriety. So I'm very grateful for this group and any of the three legacy groups that are around. I also go to the Wilder building a lot, but I'm humbled to be here. I love this group. It's helped me out a lot. We went earlier and got prayed up, and it's a very sacred room back there you go into. It's a dimly lit room, and it's small, it's intimate, and we circle up in a little group. And Steve said a prayer, and you can feel the Spirit when you're in there. And I was feeling a little nervous, and then Steve said, "We can take a shot of this communion if you want. It might loosen you up a little bit." They had the communion glasses up front. But in AA, we have a lot of fun, too, and do some laughing. I didn't take a shot of the communion. I haven't had a mind or a mood-altering substance since my sobriety date. We've had different surgeries and ups and downs, and people I love have passed on, and I've had mountaintop experiences and valley experiences, and not found the need to change my consciousness through a chemical, which is the miracle of AA. I was blessed to get into a group like this, and also I got a good sponsor who took me through the 12-step process that's outlined in the big book. And ultimately what happened was, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, we tried to carry the message to others. And what that amounted to in my life was the spiritual side of it, or the communion with God, or the awareness that something bigger than myself had my back, was what I was drinking for the whole time anyway. So slowly but surely I started to realize this is really what I wanted in the bottle the whole time. And I started to have it, through the 12-step process. And I've hung on to it most of the time. There's always that underlying stream of peace that I could tap into through the ups and downs. And it's definitely as a result of the 12-step process. So I'm supposed to tell in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. I had a family with alcoholism, genetically. Mother's side, father's side. My grandfather died 53 years old of a heart attack. And but that was just before I was born. And it was an alcohol-related heart attack. And the average lifespan of an active alcoholic is 53 years. It was 53 years then, and it's still 53 years now for an active alcoholic. So it hadn't changed much, even with all the medical advances. So both sides of the family had alcoholism. My immediate family had alcoholism in it. And what I saw of the drinking and using different substances game was it created turmoil in the family. There was always chaos. People were running into telephone poles, sideswiping cars on the way in, picking us up from school. It was just a chaotic environment, and it seemed like the marriage was always on the edge. And I wasn't stupid, even at 12 years old. I said, man, if that's what alcohol does, I don't want nothing to do with it. It was just, it was dishonest, and it was depressing, and there was no peace about it. So later on, both of my parents got sober and stayed sober. But I made a commitment early on, I don't want to mess with it. So through elementary school and high school, I kind of stayed away from it. I really never had enough alcohol to feel the effect until I was 20 years old. And what I can relay in my own personal experience and many other alcoholics that I talked to was an underlying feeling that I didn't quite fit in anywhere. A sense of isolation and separation. And that image that Chuck Chamberlain draws on the board with the circle with all of humanity, the entire universe and everything else, and then he's out here as its own separate entity, that's how I felt. And I was at a house party, 20 years old. I'd gone up to, I was going to NC State at the time, working on a degree up there. I'd come down to a house party in Whispering Pines. And a lot of the folks from Chapel Hill and Durham and guys that I went to school with were down at this house party. It was in a gated community. It was a nice place. And I pulled up to this place, sober as I am right now. And I don't know if you've ever been seized up with social anxiety. Just your heart's beating so fast, you can't even imagine how to approach anybody. That's how I felt. I felt just like the dot on the outside. And I heard a speaker say one time, it looked like everybody else at the party rode in the same car to get there. And I rode separate. You know that feeling when you get in a car with a group of people and you ride a couple hours, you just cut through all the BS and you're just there with each other? It looked like everybody else was getting along just fine. Now I said to myself, I'm just not cut out for this. I like small groups of people. I can't handle this. There was probably 60 people there. A friend of mine came over and he's got a solo cup. It was keg beer that night, and he had a solo cup full of it. And I was sitting down on the back steps of this. The house had a porch and a lower level patio with a pool table inside, sliding glass doors, and a nice backyard, a little fire pit in the middle. I was just observing the whole party. I was thinking, man, I would love to go talk to her, or this guy's got some interesting things to say, or that group looks fun over there, but they don't need an extra person in their group. And my mind was just racing. What happens if the cops show up? I'm underage. Everybody's going to have to run in the woods. And my friend came over and just said, man, Seth, you can spend the night here. We've got an upstairs bedroom for you. You're not going to get in any trouble. This is a gated community. It's a nice place. You're not going to drive tonight. Drink this down as fast as you can and just see what happens. And I followed his instructions. And I downed that beer, and it was just within a few minutes, I felt this instantaneously. I felt a tingling sensation on the front of my scalp, went down the back of my neck, down my shoulders. I took a deep breath of air. Thighs, knees, calves, ankles, the bottoms of my feet felt good. Felt really good, like a warm blanket. Mentally, as far as this incessant stream of nonstop thinking that I always was a victim of, and it quieted down. It was a quietness upstairs, which I was not used to. And a lot of times I equate it to if you have an HVAC system that's running and you've got air blowing through these vents and there's this underlying fan noise and it cuts off and you experience that peace and silence. That's what it was like in my brain. And it was quiet. And I heard another speaker say it's like when you're in a torrential downpour on the interstate and you go under the bridge, underpass. It's very quiet. So it was like that. So I said, man, this stuff's working pretty good. All those inhibitions I had about talking to somebody or they don't want me in their group, they were gone. I had serious swagger instantaneously. And I didn't have any plans for this, but a girl walked down the steps I was sitting on and I must have brushed into her. And the next thing I know, she's sitting down beside me and we are literally just hugging and kissing in front of everybody. And I'm thinking to myself, this stuff is amazing, man. I have lived 20 years of my life without experiencing this wonderful tool that God has put on earth for guys like me to interact and socialize in a hostile universe I live in. And I said, just from square one, if anything makes you feel this good, it can't be bad. I woke up in that upstairs bedroom the next morning. I had my wallet, cell phone, everything was intact. Hadn't driven, didn't get arrested, didn't hit any power poles. I had no DUI. I had no charges. And my first revelation was, you're not an alcoholic. Because alcoholics sleep under bridges and they get arrested and they lose their jobs and they lose their careers. They don't have beautiful conviviality and fun-loving experiences with their friends. The second thing was, are you going to drink again? And I was like, absolutely, yeah. I'm going to use this tool for the remainder of my life here on earth to integrate into the society I live in. Just 100% truthfully. And the third thing that was revealed, which I don't know if you've ever had to been filled in about what really happened that night. I got a phone call and it was a young lady and she said, "It's not right what y'all did last night." And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, it looks like you're the perv because you came onto her and you shouldn't have done that. I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You know damn well that was your cousin you were hooking up with." I acted like the phone lost reception. Back in the day, you're breaking up, I can't hear you. I ended the conversation. And I said, damn, I've made out and hooked up with my cousin in front of everybody. Are you going to drink again now? For anything this strong and powerful, I'm willing to take some mistakes. You dang right I'm going to drink again. And y'all would have too. I tell you what, it was from the very first time, it was a life-changing experience, and I said, I'm going to use this stuff to my advantage. The confusing thing was, for the next 5 years, I had periods of control, seeming control. I drank with little consequence, had a career that got started, I progressed in the career, I got promotions, I got raises. I worked for an engineering construction company that built power plants all over the world and throughout the United States. And we traveled to projects in College Station, Texas, and I would live there for maybe 2 years. I lived there for about 3 years on a big 2 coal-fire steam turbine generator units down there outside of College Station. And I like when Bill Wilson said he was a part of life at last. You know, he was really kind of jiving and things were going good and he had found alcohol. That's how I felt, that stuff was really working out good. And what I didn't know was for me, I was drinking just about every night. You know, it was a party every night. If Daniel was going to the bar tomorrow night, I'm there. If Kevin's cooking chicken wings the next night, I'm there. If Steve's going to the Super Bowl party and having drinks, I'm there. Every night of the week, it was just a social event, and I was young. I was 24, 25 years old. And I said, you know, real young, strong people drink hard, play hard, and work hard. And that's what we're doing. And I thought it was normal. And not only that, my boss, we would leave work, and we had about an hour drive home, and we'd carpool together, and we'd stop by this gas station on the way home. And backtrack just a little bit, middle of the day, something weird started happening. Now, I'd be doing my job. My job was to look at piping drawings and civil drawings and determine how far along on these projects we were, do progress reports and create reports for the project manager. And I would be out on the job site looking at these 2 units coming up and analyzing steel and looking at pipe. And all of a sudden I couldn't focus. All I could think about was that at the end of the dirt road that came into the project site was a gas station with the coolers with the pop-up lids, and there were ice cold 24-ounce cans in there. And I would get thirsty. 1 p.m. on a Wednesday with 4 more hours of work to go. I would start getting thirsty. And I thought, that's strange. But I didn't think too much about it. But my boss was such a good guy. And when we got out of work, we'd stop by that gas station and get our 224s every day in a brown paper bag and then drive an hour home. And usually I'd have a pretty good game plan about go home, you know, watch the news, eat dinner, go to bed. But on the way home, after the second one was kicking in, I said, let's just go down to the bar and have some wings. You know, let's not cook tonight. You ever have a few drinks and change your plan? That's the phenomenon of craving. I had no idea. That is the phenomenon of craving. I wasn't driving the boat once I took a drink. The drink was. And so I was experienced that a little bit. And as you know, it's kind of a downhill spiral from there. But managed to make it through that project and went up to a project in outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, and worked up there for about a year. And then I was just unable to be responsible. I slowly started not showing up on time, not doing the stuff I was supposed to be doing. And sooner or later, the company called me in and said, Seth, great employee when you got here. You did really good these first few years and really helped us out a lot. But over the last 8 months, you've just declined immensely, and we want to get you some help. They said, we don't know exactly what your issue is. Sometimes we would smell alcohol on you. Sometimes you wouldn't slur your words or anything, but you just nod off at a meeting or something. And they said, we don't know what's going on. We want you to get some help. Under the Family Medical Leave Act, you can actually leave your job and get some help and come back into your place of employment like it never happened. So they were like pushing it on me, man. I felt cornered. I was in a big conference room. They were kind of giving me an ultimatum. I didn't know it. They said, or if you don't want to get treatment and just don't want to get back on the track, then you can be terminated today. And you can walk out with your cardboard box full of your stuff. And all I could hear really, and this is crazy, through the place my mind was at was, they're trying to strip me of the most powerful tool I've ever come across to fit in the world I live in. And that's the requirements to work here. And if that's the requirements, it's too much to ask. I can't do it. So I said, thank you for everything you've done for me. I appreciate everything, and I guess this is my last day. And I walked out, $850 a month truck payment, $2,200 a month apartment. This is 2007. Tremendous financial burden, credit card debt, nowhere to go, no prospects for a job. And I felt as if my life was unraveling faster than I pulled the cord out. The career was gone. I had no choice but to move back into my mother's basement. I was 25 and I was feeling like the biggest loser I ever existed. But I was convinced, like Bill said, he drank and that old eager determination to win came back. I was convinced that I could get back on the path, that this stuff didn't have me down. I would find a way to drink moderately or find the right formula, and I'd figure this thing out. And that was going to be my goal and assignment in life. So for the next next year or so, I floundered around Moore County, and sooner or later my mom, she wised up and she knows about enabling. She said, enough's enough. You can't stay here. You got to find somewhere else. And I was getting to that confusing time that a lot of us go through where I'm stuck doing it, but it's not really that much fun anymore. It's not like in my early 20s when we're meeting and hooking up and meeting new exciting people and going and traveling down to Savannah and they're dyeing the river green and we're getting on a yacht and stuff's fun. It's not like that. It's like I'm going to Neville's and in a smoky environment for 6 hours and I don't see anybody interesting and I go back home lonely and depressed and I'm like, this really ain't that much fun anymore. My mom's just kicked me out. I'm starting to think I need some help. Maybe I don't need help, but I'm going to quit. Or I'm going to cut back. And around that time, a friend had that I went to high school with, it's just a dear friend, one of those friends that kind of stuck with you to the bitter end. Everybody's got them. He said, Seth, you're going to kill yourself. He said, I'm out here in Billings, Montana. It's a beautiful country, it's a beautiful state. There's just a few people out here, and they've got these wonderful national parks and rivers and valleys and great peaks that flow all through the state, and we can travel and we can trout fish and we can go hiking and we can see the western United States, and you can live in my apartment, and I've got a metalworking company. You can work for me until you get on your feet, but you've got to go to treatment. I said, wow, man. I almost broke down in tears because I was not really having fun. I said, I'll be out there in 2 weeks. So I drove this truck that I hadn't made a payment on in about 9 months. It was in repossession. So they were looking for the truck. I drove it out 2,400 miles. I said, they'll never find it out here, man. I got this thing clean and clear. I drove that truck out there to Montana, and I went to treatment, and I learned a lot of very just wonderful stuff. They said, first day in treatment, they said, you want to stay sober? Here's a big book. You do this program when you get out. I stayed in for 45 days. Just a wonderful facility. Counselors that were in drug addiction and had chronic alcoholism in their past and had recovered and were contributing members of society now, and fathers and mothers and showing up. And they told me about the 12-step process and the surrender and the inventory steps and the confession of character defects and the amends and the communion with a power greater than myself and a relationship with God and service to others. And I thought, man, this really makes a lot of sense. So this really might be the ticket. And, sometimes we hear stories and we're being convinced. We haven't had the experience yet, but we're saying, this might work for me. And I was like on that edge of buying the whole program 100%. And by about the end of it, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm really going to do it. I'm going to do the AA thing, the whole 12 steps, everything, get the sponsor, everything. I said, but my one issue is they want complete abstinence. That's weird. And I said, that's okay for real bad cases, but, I just want to stay out the hard stuff. And on New Year's Eve, when we're going to toast and they send little glasses around everybody, I'm not going to be weird and not take a sip of the champagne. I'll take a sip of the champagne or do something mild, like a Sam Adams at the football game. But I'm not getting back on the hard stuff. And what they call that is a reservation. And I found out it's very hard to practice the AA program without a deep surrender and with reservation still. And the second day out of treatment, I found myself in Las Vegas. The guy I was living with and working with was they had this safari overlanding expedition thing, a big event down there, and they sold different kinds of expedition gear. And he said, Seth, why don't you come down here with me and you can be the chef. We won't take you to the event, but you can just be the chef, hang out at the house, and you can cook meals and have meals ready for us when we get home. So yeah, that's a good idea. I'm good at cooking. I can cook anything. And they came home one afternoon, and I was cooking some spaghetti, and a young lady came by and she said, I'm going to have a Corona. You want one? And I thought, nobody's ever gotten in any trouble drinking a Corona with a lime in it. One Corona with a lime. I mean, nothing's wrong with that. I drank that one. The phenomenon of craving became paramount over all other interests. And the spaghetti was not made that night. I drank 23 more, and I was knee-walking drunk 48 hours out of treatment with a sincere desire to stop. A sincere desire. This time I felt like a real loser. I had disappointed my friend. I had disappointed my family. I had lost my career. I was 2,400 miles away from anybody I knew and loved. I was extremely depressed, and I started to be convinced that even AA, because I've been to AA meetings, even AA can't save me. And I'm too broken for it. So I went for a drive one afternoon, and I stopped at a gas station, and I saw some guys and a couple people sitting on the curb at the gas station with backpacks on. And they were smoking the cigarettes that were half smoked that people threw down in the parking lot. And they had scars from picking at their face, and they looked thin and they smelled bad. And I said, these people got it figured out, man. Their entire existence is to stay as messed up as they can 24 hours a day for the rest of their life, and they're not doing anything else. They don't worry about a home, a place to stay, anything. That's their whole job and prerogative. I said, I'm going to get in with them. And what I really wanted to do was, it's summarized in here. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. And the other, to accept spiritual help. I didn't know about the spiritual help, but I knew about blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation. And that's what I tried to do for the next 18 months as a homeless man with a backpack on, 40 pounds less than I am right now, walking around the streets of Billings, Montana, continuously in a state of absolute chaos, turmoil, living like an animal. Arrested on a regular basis, in and out of jail, fully convinced that I would live my life on what Tom Ivester said was the installment plan. Small increments into jail and then back out. Increments in, back out. Never to see my parents again, or my little sister, who at one point thought I hung the moon, and my grandparents and the people that I loved back in North Carolina, and anybody that I'd ever known was just a memory in the past, and I would just burn the candle at both ends until my heart stopped beating. Somewhere in June of 2014, there was a tragic realization. When we became alcoholics, we were crushed by the self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade. And the self-imposed crisis was, I had pickled my brain so bad that the stuff didn't work anymore. But I was stuck going back to it. And it didn't matter what I put in my system, how strong it was, where it came from, how I put it in there. I could not get back to the good old days, and I could not quiet my mind down. Even in a blackout, it was still there. I could still see the parents' faces. I could still see the people that I had hurt. And I felt extremely depressed, and I was in just a dreadful state. And I knelt down on the edge of the Yellowstone River, where there was a 100-foot sandstone wall. The river's been going through there for 40 million years, so it's got a little trench. And it had migrated away from the bank, and it was a solid piece of stone at the bottom. I said, well, I was having like an emotional breakdown, tears, sobbing, thinking about my life. How could I ever end up here? How did you end up here? You weren't raised this way. And I said, if you just go down head first, at least it'll be all over, and the thoughts will quiet down. And in that moment, I found that there's something in the human heart that knows where to turn when your life's in danger. If you've ever had a close call with a car accident or been in a lethal situation, we automatically say, God, help me. And I said, God, please help me. I can't do this anymore. And there's something very interesting that when we ask without specification on what the help has to look like, stars start to align, don't they? Stuff starts to come together and things start to work out. I didn't say, God, help me, and I want this and this and this. I just said, God, please help me. Somehow in the next 24 hours, I was taken in handcuffs to the Billings International Airport and given 2 boarding passes to go through Denver and back to RDU. Ended up back in RDU with an interstate compact to a probation and parole office in North Carolina. And in about 10 days after landing in RDU, I went over the hill to a small 12-person treatment facility in Rockingham called the Samaritan Colony. Beautiful place. Cinder block building. Very clear present. And this time I showed up to the front door, and there was a few men sitting outside, and they welcomed me and said, we're glad you're here, and it's going to be all right. And in my head, there was this tape playing saying, you're just going to disappoint everybody again. You always disappoint everybody. And they welcomed me in. It was lunchtime. Ron had cooked fried pork chops and green beans. And I was hungry. And we ate lunch. We said a prayer. We ate lunch. And something strange happened. When the lunch was over, all the guys that were in treatment got up and started cleaning up the cafeteria area and taking the dishes back and washing them in the dish pit and sweeping up and wiping down the tables. And the whole place was getting whipped into shape. I didn't know what to do. So I just went back to the dish pit and said, man, let me in here. As soon as I put the dish in the water and became a part of the service to the others that we were all involved in, I felt a part of the team and a part of something bigger. And that's what AA's also done. But I felt like I fit in. Within a couple of weeks, they had gone through the first 3 steps, pretty in depth. And they said, what's the third step mean to you? And I said, well, I guess this is the real deal surrender. This is the real deal turning it over to God. relinquishing control of what I want my life to look like, where I'm going to work, who I'm going to be with, where I'm going to live, what I'm going to drive, all that stuff. Relinquish that into His care, and I'll just make a commitment to try the AA path with the very best of my ability. And I knelt down and said, God, you got it from here. If you want me to try this stupid AA thing, I'll do it again. But you got everything else. And from that moment until today, I've not had the compulsion to drink come back. So there was something very critical about just that true surrender into the process. The great thing about the colony was we had perfect freedom to do our 4-step, and we had no external distractions. So I wrote the best 4-step I could have ever written, and I also like how Tom I said it was the most important day's work I've ever done in my entire life. He did it in prison, and I can say it's pretty much mine too. And I did the 5th step, and the guys in treatment said, "Man, something strange happens when you do your 5th step." He said, "We can't put our finger on it, but there's a clarity. You feel more involved. You feel more alive. We feel like the thing can really work now." The 5th step's it's very cool, man. And you got to do it. So I did my 5th step with Robert and got it out there, and there was no judgment. He just said, "Yeah, me too, me too." And there was no judgment. There was just love. And I tell you, the love that was in the room transcended everything else, everything in my past. And I felt a healing presence. And as the promises say, we may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but we now begin to have a spiritual experience right after that. And I could feel it. And I walked outside and I saw it's a beautiful forested area with these tall pine trees and hardwoods in the background. And I saw these beautiful pine trees in late August, and all the colors, and this deep, gorgeous sunset with oranges and yellows and pinks and purples going down over the hill. And I heard the sound of nature and birds moving through and a breeze blowing through. And I felt it on my skin. And I said, wow, this really worked. Because I had been completely asleep to all that for probably the last decade. And that was my first real conscious contact. I said, okay, man, maybe AA really has something big here. I'm going to follow through with the rest of it. I went to a recovery home after I got out of treatment, got a sponsor, started working the steps. 90 meetings in 90 days was absolutely critical because I was just so disoriented. I needed instruction, but 90 meetings in 90 days really made me fit and feel like I was a part of AA. You know, meeting the people, and all of a sudden I had a group of friends and we were going out to eat and things were working out. I had a tremendous backlog of legal trouble and health trouble and relational trouble, stuff that looked like it could never be corrected, just a mountain that couldn't be climbed. And my sponsor just kept saying, let's just work through these 12 spiritual actions as they're outlined in the big book. Let's meet every week and let's be persistent with it. Let's let God see if He can handle some of those things. And slowly but surely, the health stuff was reconciled, the legal stuff was reconciled, the relationships were rebuilt. And in December of that first year, my mother invited me over for Christmas Eve. And she said, you can spend the night here for Christmas Eve and wake up with everybody on Christmas. And the relationship was starting to be rebuilt, and there was some trust. And I stayed down in the basement in my old bedroom. And the next morning, I got up and I was doing my gratitude list, which they taught me, my sponsor had taught me, just 10 items I was grateful for. And I had some candles lit, and my mom she was sneaking down the stairs because she thought I might be getting into some trouble down there. So it was like 6:30 a.m. I don't blame her, you know. That was my track record, I was going to go off the rails. So she was sneaking down the stairs, and she catches a glimpse, and there I am just writing my gratitude list, a couple candles lit, got a devotional book out, and she falls down on her knees and starts sobbing and saying, God, thank you so much, Father, thank you. I've got my son back, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it made an impact. And I said, wow, these fundamental tools that they're teaching in AA are very powerful, and they work. Not only for me, but for my family. And she said, son, you're not the kid that I raised. You're not the young man that was out there strung out on alcohol and other substances. You're a total new entity, a human being. And I feel like you're better than anything else in the past that we've ever had, and our relationship's stronger than it ever was. And you've turned a page, and that kind of rebirth thing was starting to happen. And I continued with the AA process, got involved with groups like this, got signed up for stuff like detox and Samaritan Colony and the jail, and my sobriety continued to improve. Got a landscaping job. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. They put me on pine cone picker-upper job as my landscape job. And there's a retirement community called Middleton Place. It's right on Midland Road. It's a beautiful little retirement community. And we had a contract to do that retirement community. And they said, Seth, you pick up pine cones. Well, there's about 7 acres of pine tree fields. So I would be out there listening to my AA speaker tape in one ear, picking up pine cones, just going about my way. And I'd look up and see, these beautiful branches and 3 dimensions and a blue sky with clouds coming over and a cool September breeze. I'd say, I love my life. I just love my life. I was fully content. Something had happened where I was content. I was living in a recovery house. I was sharing a bedroom with 2 twin beds with another guy, and I was absolutely peaceful and content. And I said, wow, it must not have much to do with the material plane. There must be something with this spiritual plane that's where the fulfillment was coming from. And ebbs and flows, life took off, things improved dramatically, just like they do with a lot of us. And I encountered my first big ground shaking thing in 2018. My grandfather, who was like a dad to me, who would send me messages when I was in Billings, son, I know you can do it. One day you're going to kick this thing. One day you're going to get better. He had bought a mobile home and had put it on his property, and I was living in the mobile home. And we were kind of best friends. We hung out a lot, went to dinner. And in 2018, on September 18th, I held his hand and we sat in his bed together, and he had lung cancer. And we were watching TV, and he squeezed my hand and said, I love you, son. You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. And I went home that night, and somebody else stayed with him for the night. But my mom called at 3 a.m. and said, Papa went home peacefully, without any struggle or fight, without any pain, and he is now alive in the spirit. And I felt that the body can die, but the spirit can go on forever. I felt no tremendous loss like I thought I would. I always thought that the death of a loved one could be an opening to a drink. I had no desire to drink. And that was my first real wow, AA can work in the ups and downs. Truly can. Later, another strange thing that happened, I'd be mowing grass and working on a zero-turn mower, real loud, bouncing around, dust flying everywhere, and a dragonfly would land on my shoulder and ride there for about 5 minutes. And I would hear those same things. Son, you're doing a good job. Keep up the good work. And I can feel that even though he's not here, there are other people I know, I still feel immense closeness to them sometimes when I'm quiet enough. 2020, my wife and I got married. 2022, we had this beautiful baby boy. His name's Mason. Healthy, happy, the center of our lives. And through all the ups and downs, scuba diving in Hawaii and looking at these fish and this coral reef and just having these experiences where you feel so close and connected to nature and to God, AA has worked all the way through for me, through the ups and downs, through the mountaintops and the valleys. And I'll just close with this. And I'll say that when I do have those days where I just say, man, I just feel like doing nothing. I'm depressed. I'm not feeling good. I don't know why. I haven't changed anything. I'm pissed off or angry or lonely. I'll have a commitment that shows up that, damn, it's got to be down at First Health at 7 o'clock. Oh, man, I don't want to do it. I get up and go down there anyway. And I'll tell you what, after what's 1 hour? That's no big deal. After 1 hour in the detox and sharing with some folks in there, I come out on a cloud, man. I'm floating. And I don't even remember the depression, and things have worked out, and I feel a lot better. So this program for me is the really most effective in allowing me not to serve myself and providing me an avenue of service to others. And there's plenty of ways to do service. You can go to Zimbabwe and pass out mosquito nets. But if you're an alcoholic like me, there's an absolute positive avenue for service right here in your hometown. You don't have to go anywhere. And I'm so grateful for it. I just want to read this statement. It kind of sums up my whole story in the AA experience. The great fact is just this and nothing less. We've had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do for ourselves. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.